War never changes, but what if the war was never ours to begin with? Welcome back to another journey into the darkest corners of Fallout lore. Today, we're uncovering something that should have stayed buried in the radioactive dust: the Alien Harvest Protocol, the treaty that was signed before you were born, the conspiracy that's still operating while you sleep. In 1968, USSA Intelligence Director James Crawford walked into a hangar at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and signed away the future of the human species, 1,000 humans per year. That was the price for fusion technology, advanced weapons, and the biological nightmare that became the forced evolutionary virus. But the aliens didn't just want subjects for experiments, they wanted a harvest. And nuclear war on the 23rd of October 2077 wasn't the end of humanity. It was just the ripening signal for a crop that's been cultivated for 10,000 years. The settlement attacks across the wasteland aren't random raider violence. They're scheduled collections, still following contracts signed in pre-war offices by men who never imagined their grandchildren would be the ones harvested. Every Pip-Boy contains a tracking beacon the aliens can detect from orbit, marking vault dwellers as premium specimens who've been protected from random mutation for exactly this purpose. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if you like the content. They found my office 3 weeks after the bombs fell. Blood on the walls, classified files scattered everywhere, and my service revolver empty on the desk. The investigators assumed I'd eaten a bullet, like so many others that October morning. They were wrong. I was already aboard Mothership Zeta by then, watching Earth burn from orbit, and I've been transmitting this confession through their equipment ever since. My name was James Crawford, USSA Intelligence Director, and I signed humanity's extinction warrant in 1968. The treaty negotiations took place in a hangar at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Not in some smoke-filled room where men shake hands, but in a sterile white chamber that hurt to look at directly. 3 of them stood across from me. Not stood, exactly, hovered. Their skin had this translucent quality, like wax paper stretched over bone. When they spoke, the words appeared directly in my mind, bypassing my ears entirely. The sensation made my teeth ache. They'd been watching us for centuries, they explained, collecting, studying. But the nuclear age had accelerated their timeline. They needed more specimens before we destroyed ourselves, and they were willing to trade for cooperation. The technology they offered sat on that metal table between us, a fusion core no bigger than my fist, advanced polymers that laughed at conventional weapons, and a vial of green liquid they called evolutionary insurance. 1,000 humans per year. That was the price. Not random abductions anymore. Organized, scheduled, quotas met through official channels disguised as missing persons cases, unexplained disappearances in rural communities where questions die quickly. I told myself I was saving millions by sacrificing thousands. That fusion technology alone would end the resource wars. That we'd finally have the edge over China. President Nixon's advisors had made it clear we were losing. The oil was running out. The Chinese were developing something called FEV at their own facilities. We needed any advantage we could get, even if it came from beings who'd been harvesting humans since the pyramids were built. The first transport manifests I signed felt like regular paperwork. Names, ages, psychological profiles. The aliens were specific about what they wanted: strong immune systems, diverse genetic backgrounds, high stress tolerance. I learned to recognize the criteria, learned which small towns could lose residents without triggering federal investigations, learned how to classify them as runaways, drifters, voluntary disappearances. Colonel Hartigan wasn't a volunteer. I selected him personally in 1968 when his Clarabella 7 mission put him in the perfect position for interception. His psychological profile indicated extreme resilience under interrogation, The aliens wanted to test how long a trained military officer could resist their procedures. I watched his abduction on their monitoring equipment, watched them fail to break him before the stress killed him. They kept his body in stasis anyway. Waste not. Holly Beresford was different. She volunteered. Our linguistics specialist at the NSA had been monitoring the alien transmissions for months, and she'd started to decode patterns in their communication. When she told me what she'd learned, I almost had her committed. The aliens weren't just studying us, they were preparing us. Every abduction, every genetic sample, every tissue extraction was part of a cultivation program spanning millennia. What do you think really happened here? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because what I'm about to tell you contradicts everything you thought you knew about the war. They showed me the projections 3 years before the bombs fell. Holographic displays of Earth on the 23rd of October 2077. Every major city targeted, every nuclear power launching simultaneously. The aliens knew the exact hour the war would start because they'd been steering us toward it for generations. Every arms race, every diplomatic failure, every resource shortage, they'd been carefully adjusting variables, pruning humanity's decision tree until only one branch remained: total nuclear war. They offered me a choice: increase the quota to 10,000 per month, and they'd evacuate selected individuals, politicians, scientists, artists, anyone I designated. They'd preserve them in stasis until the surface was ready for repopulation. The catch was written in genetic code. Every evacuee would undergo modification. Hybridization, they called it, becoming compatible with their long-term plans. I spent 6 months reviewing the Vault-Tec schematics. The vaults were already built, already designated for their cruel experiments. Vault 11 with its human sacrifices, Vault 87 with its FEV mutations, Vault 101 with its permanent isolation. The aliens had been feeding Vault-Tec ideas through intermediaries for decades, shaping their experiments to test variables they wanted data on. Each vault was a petri dish, each experiment designed to produce specific evolutionary pressures. The technology they'd given us became the foundation for everything that would kill us. The green liquid I'd carried from Wright-Patterson found its way to West Tech. They called it a biological warfare defense program, renamed it the forced evolutionary virus. The aliens had encoded specific triggers into its structure, genetic time bombs that would activate after exposure to specific radiation signatures. They weren't giving us weapons to defend ourselves. They were giving us tools to help them cultivate the mutations they wanted to harvest later. General Constantine Chase didn't know his winterized power armor used alien neural interface technology. The targeting systems that let him retake Anchorage were based on direct brain-to-machine communication protocols the aliens had been perfecting for centuries on human test subjects. Every soldier who wore that armor was unknowingly beta testing technology meant for the hybrid programs. I found the proof in 1974 when my daughter disappeared. Sarah was 16, straight-A student, wanted to be a doctor. I came home to find her room empty and a sealed envelope on her bed. Inside was a photograph of her in one of their medical bays and a document promising weekly status reports if I maintained cooperation. The aliens called it collateral enhancement. I called it hostage-taking. For 3 years, I received reports showing Sarah's improvements, increased bone density, enhanced neural pathways, radiation immunity. They were turning my daughter into something that could survive the world they were planning to create. The Vault-Tec board meetings were where it all came together. I attended one in 2075, classified above top secret, held in a bunker beneath Arlington. 17 board members sat at that table. 3 of them weren't human. You could tell if you knew what to look for. The way they never blinked at exactly the same interval as everyone else. How their skin sat just slightly wrong on their faces. They'd been surgically modified, implanted with human appearances, but the timing was off. They'd been guiding Vault-Tec policy for years, ensuring the Vault experiments aligned with alien research priorities. They wanted to know how humans adapted to specific stresses: isolation, FEV exposure, radiation at various levels, forced evolution along controlled pathways. Every vault was designed to answer questions they'd been asking for millennia. What breaks humans? What makes them stronger? What genetic combinations produce desirable traits? The Vault experiments weren't about saving anyone. They were about refining the harvest. I traced the alien presence back through history, ancient structures around the world, Stonehenge, the pyramids, Angkor Wat, all built on ley lines that marked previous extraction points, each one corresponding to a civilization collapse: the Bronze Age collapse, the fall of Rome, the Black Death. Every major population crash in human history coincided with what the aliens called harvest cycles. They'd been cultivating humanity for 10,000 years, periodically culling populations and collecting genetic diversity. They'd tried this before on other worlds, they finally admitted. Species that resisted went extinct. Species that cooperated survived, but in forms their creators wouldn't recognize. They showed me images of those worlds, beings that had once been like us, now serving as biological components in alien technology, living ships, sentient weapons, hybrid creatures that existed in states between life and machine. The Mariposa military base received its first FEV shipment in January 2077. By October, they'd begun human testing despite objections from West Tech scientists. The military didn't know they were following a script the aliens had written. The specific genetic modifications in FEV, batch 11 to 111, weren't random. They were designed to produce mutations that would be useful after nuclear war: radiation immunity, increased size and strength, reduced intelligence that made subjects more controllable. The supermutants weren't accidents. They were prototypes. If you've ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me in the comments, because I made mine, and I'm still living with it. President Richardson wasn't entirely human by 2077. I'd noticed the changes starting in 2065. Small things at first. The way his hands moved with slightly too much flexibility, how he never seemed tired despite 20-hour workdays. By 2070, the signs were unmistakable to anyone who knew what to look for. They'd replaced him with a modified clone, one programmed to make specific decisions at specific times. The real Richardson had been taken years earlier, probably held in the same section of Zeta where they kept the other high-value subjects. The children from the accelerated education programs were the next phase. Vault-Tec ran them through Robco Industries, selecting children with specific genetic markers. By age 10, these kids could solve differential equations. By 15, they were designing weapons systems. By 20, they were mentally unstable and showing signs of rapid aging. The aliens had been testing accelerated development protocols, seeing how fast they could mature hybrid genetics without complete breakdown. The program produced 3 viable subjects out of 2,000. Those 3 disappeared in 2076. I know because I signed their transfer orders. I discovered that every Pip-Boy unit contained a tracking beacon the aliens could detect from orbit. The satellite uplinks weren't just for mapping. They transmitted biological data continuously: heart rate, radiation exposure, genetic drift patterns. Every Vault dweller was a walking data transmission unit, feeding information directly to alien monitoring systems. Robco Industries had embedded the protocols at the hardware level. The company's founding board included 2 alien hybrids. The settlement patterns across pre-war America weren't random. I pulled census data going back to 1,800 and overlaid it with alien abduction hotspot maps. They matched perfectly. Small towns in specific geographic locations experienced higher disappearance rates. Those same towns had been built on sites of previous alien interest. The aliens had been guiding human settlement patterns through economic incentives, ensuring populations concentrated in easily harvestable locations. 3 months before the bombs fell, I received a final offer. They would evacuate me, my family, and 50 others of my choosing. The price was steeper than the original quota: complete genetic modification, integration into their hybrid program, memories partially erased to ensure cooperation. We'd survive, but we wouldn't be human anymore. Not really. I was 53 years old. I'd been carrying their secrets for 9 years. I was so tired. I wrote my final report on the 22nd of October, 2077. Every classified document I'd accumulated, every treaty violation, every name on the transport manifests. I sealed it in a titanium case and buried it under the reflecting pool in D.C. If anyone ever finds it, they'll know the truth, that humanity's extinction wasn't an accident or even a failure of diplomacy. It was a scheduled harvest, planned and executed by beings who'd been farming us for 10,000 years. The air raid sirens started. At 9:17 a.m. on October 23, I was in my office at Langley when the first nuclear detection alerts came through. Chinese submarines off both coasts, high-altitude bombers, missile launches from Siberia. But I knew something the others didn't. I'd seen the alien timetables. Those weren't Chinese weapons launching first. They were alien-manufactured devices detonating in the atmosphere, creating the electromagnetic signature of nuclear launches. The Chinese and Americans were responding to attacks that never came from each other. I chose to stay on the surface, refused evacuation. If I was going to die, it would be as a human, not as whatever they wanted to turn me into. But the tractor beam caught me anyway, as I stood in the parking lot watching the mushroom clouds rise over Washington. They'd never intended to let me choose. I was too valuable, too much classified knowledge, too many genetic markers they wanted to preserve. Now I'm here, aboard Zeta, transmitting this confession through channels I barely understand. They keep me in a cell with others. Sarah is here too. She's beautiful in a way that hurts to look at. Too perfect, too symmetrical. She doesn't recognize me anymore. The modifications changed her mind along with her body. The other abductees tell me I've been here for 200 years. Time moves differently on Zeta. The cryogenic cycles make it impossible to track. Sometimes I'm conscious for what feels like days. Sometimes I wake up and civilizations have risen and fallen on the surface below. The aliens show me through the observation windows. They want me to see what my cooperation created. The wasteland isn't an accident. It's a garden. I've mapped every section of this ship I can access. The engineering core, where they found Hartigan's body. The biological research labs, where they're still conducting experiments on creatures pulled from the surface. The cryogenic storage facility that holds thousands of subjects from every era of human history. I found a samurai from the 1600s, a cowboy from the 1882nd, a family from pre-war Boston frozen mid-scream. But the worst section is what they call the nursery. That's where they're growing the hybrids. The tanks stretch for hundreds of meters. Each one contains a human form suspended in green liquid, not quite human anymore. The genetic modifications are visible even through the clouded fluid. Extra limbs, modified skeletal structures, skin that shifts between textures. These aren't people, they're components. Raw material for whatever the aliens are building. I recognize some of the faces, politicians I worked with, scientists from Vault-Tec and Robco, military officers who disappeared during the resource wars. They've all been harvested, modified, and stored for later use. The aliens don't waste anything. Every human they've ever taken is archived here, broken down into useful genetic sequences and recombined in ways that serve their purposes. Sally is the only other one who understands what's happening. The little girl they took right after the bombs fell. She's been awake longer than anyone, refusing the deep sleep, learning their systems. She whispers to me through the ventilation ducts. She's found something in the ship's databanks, something that changes everything. The aliens have 12 motherships in Earth's orbit. Zeta is just one. Each ship contains between 15 and 30,000 human specimens collected across millennia. But they're not the primary collectors. They're middle management. The real architects are something else, something bigger. The Zetans are just farmers tending someone else's crop. The holographic archives Sally accessed show Earth from 50,000 years ago. The aliens were here even then, watching proto-humans develop. They didn't create us, but they've been guiding our evolution since before we built our first cities. Every major technological leap, every agricultural revolution, every population boom, they were adjusting variables, breeding humanity toward specific traits. Intelligence was never the goal. We were supposed to be smart enough to develop nuclear technology, but not wise enough to avoid using it. That was the key. They needed us to irradiate our own planet, because radiation accelerates the genetic mutations they're harvesting. Natural evolution takes millions of years. Forced evolution through nuclear devastation produces useful mutations within generations. I found the manifests for post-war collection operations. Starting in 2087, 10 years after the bombs, they began scheduled harvests at specific surface locations. Settlement attacks that wastelanders blamed on raiders or super mutants. Entire communities disappearing overnight. The aliens have been following pre-war acquisition lists, still collecting subjects according to contracts signed in air-conditioned offices centuries ago. The Pip-Boys aren't just tracking devices, they're breeding markers. Every vault dweller carries a beacon that identifies them as premium specimens, protected from random mutation, raised in controlled environments, fed specific diets, exposed to calculated radiation levels. The vaults weren't shelters, they were breeding pens, and every dweller is marked for harvest. Vault 87's FEV experiments produced exactly what the aliens wanted: super mutants with predictable genetic modifications, radiation immunity combined with increased physical capability, reduced cognitive function that makes subjects manageable. The master stumbled onto alien research when he fell into those vats. His unity wasn't a new idea. It was him accidentally discovering the cultivation program and trying to accelerate it with the limited understanding of a human mind. The Institute's synth program was even more directly influenced. I've seen the original research documents aboard Zeta. The aliens transmitted the foundational theories directly to CIT researchers in 2180, third generation. Synths aren't just advanced robots, they're human-alien hybrid platforms. The synthetic organs can interface with alien technology. The neural pathways are compatible with their control systems. Every Gen 3 synth is a prototype invasion vessel, a body the aliens can upload themselves into when the time comes. Soma, the wastelander who woke up next to me in the cells, keeps asking why they haven't invaded already. Why all this preparation? Why wait? I know the answer because they told me during the treaty negotiations. They're not invading, they're transforming. By the time they're finished, humans will welcome the integration, will beg for the modifications that let us survive in the wasteland they created. The Enclave knew pieces of this. I found evidence in the ship's archives. President Richardson, the real one before they replaced him, had compiled a report on alien infiltration. He'd discovered the hybrid board members at Vault-Tec, traced the technology transfers from Wright-Patterson to West Tech, realized the FEV wasn't entirely human science. That's why they replaced him. The aliens couldn't risk someone with presidential authority exposing the program. The modified FEV virus the Enclave developed to exterminate mutants, that was alien technology too. They gave it to the Enclave through back channels, letting them think they'd developed it independently. The virus was designed to eliminate unstable mutations while preserving genetically valuable specimens. It was quality control for the harvest. The Enclave thought they were purifying humanity. They were actually doing the aliens' weeding for them. Every faction in the wasteland serves the alien agenda without knowing it. The Brotherhood of Steel hoarding technology? That concentrates advanced systems in locations the aliens can easily target. The NCR expanding across California? That establishes stable population centers for scheduled collections. The railroad freeing synths? That disperses hybrid test subjects across the wasteland, spreading the alien-compatible genetic modifications into the human breeding pool. I've watched through the observation windows as they conduct surface operations. Small ships deploy at night, moving faster than anything human-made. They hit settlements, take what they need, and leave before anyone can organize resistance. The settlers blame super mutants or raiders because that's easier than accepting there are beings in orbit, harvesting them like crops. The Pip-Boy tracking data streams constantly to Zeta. I've seen the monitoring stations. Every vault dweller who's ever worn one shows up as a blinking green dot on their displays. Current location, health status, genetic drift patterns. The aliens know where every marked human is at all times. When a Pip-Boy signal stops moving, they send a collection team to retrieve the remains for genetic archiving. No one escapes the catalog. Toshiro, the samurai, has been here since the 1600s. He doesn't speak English, but we've developed a crude sign language. He carved something into the wall of his cell that Sally translated. It's a date. The same date keeps appearing in his carvings. October 23. He knew. Somehow, across 4 centuries in stasis, he knew the exact date the bombs would fall. The aliens had shown him the projections during his interrogation. They'd been planning the harvest schedule for hundreds of years. Paulson, the cowboy, tells stories about his abduction in the 1,880 seconds, strange lights in the desert, cattle mutilations, entire homesteads disappearing overnight. The aliens have been operating openly on Earth's surface for centuries. We just explained it away with folklore and legend, UFO sightings, alien abductions, conspiracy theories. They were all real, all documented, all ignored because accepting the truth was too terrifying. Elliot Turkorian was military, taken during the war. He tells me about the experiments they did on his unit, testing human response to alien weapons, measuring how much radiation exposure soldiers could survive, determining optimal genetic candidates for the hybrid programs. His entire battalion was selected specifically because their genetic profiles indicated useful traits: high stress tolerance, strong immune response, aggressive tendencies that could be harnessed. The aliens aren't evil. That's what makes this worse. They don't hate humanity. They're not invading out of malice. We're agriculture, resources to be managed. They cultivate us the same way we cultivate corn, generations of selective breeding to enhance desired traits, periodic culling to maintain genetic diversity, harvest schedules optimized for maximum yield. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from the wasteland, hit that subscribe button. It tells me someone out there is still paying attention to warnings like these. The ship's archives contain projections extending to 2387. That's when the final harvest is scheduled, 300 years after the bombs fell. By then, the wasteland will have produced enough stable mutations to meet their quotas. The radiation levels will have decreased enough to make surface operations easier. The human population will have been reduced to manageable numbers, and most importantly, the remaining humans will carry the genetic modifications necessary for full integration into the alien collective. They've done this before on other worlds. Sally found the records: 43 planets across 12 systems, each one cultivated for millennia, each one brought to nuclear devastation, each one harvested at the optimal moment. Some species resisted and went extinct. Others cooperated and survived, but as components rather than civilizations. The aliens aren't conquerors, they're gardeners, and Earth is just another plot in their cosmic farm. The death claws weren't entirely an accident. I found the original research notes. The Enclave used FEV and genetic manipulation to create them, yes, but the base genome came from alien archives. The aliens have been creating similar creatures on other worlds for millions of years. Intelligent predators designed to cull weak populations and strengthen remaining genetic lines. Every Deathclaw attack is artificial selection, eliminating humans who lack the traits the aliens want to preserve. The ghouls are closer to the alien plan than anyone realizes. Humans modified by radiation into immortal, disease-resistant forms. Some maintain their intelligence, some descend into feral hunger. The aliens are studying both outcomes, determining which environmental factors produce useful ghouls versus disposable ones. Every ghoul is a walking experiment in directed mutation, producing data that feeds into the cultivation program. I've been trying to sabotage their systems. Small acts of resistance when they think I'm compliant. Sally helps. She's rewired maintenance drones, corrupted genetic databases, released subjects from stasis ahead of schedule. But it's like fighting the ocean with a bucket. The operation is too massive, too distributed across too many systems, and too much time. The other motherships have their own specimen collections. Ship designated Beta contains humans from European stock collected since the Roman Empire. Ship Gamma holds Asian populations archived since the Bronze Age. Each ship specializes in different genetic lines, ensuring diversity in the final harvest. Together, they hold the complete genetic library of human civilization. I asked them once why they needed so many of us. Why not just take genetic samples and clone what they needed? The answer chilled me more than anything else they'd shown me. Cloning produces stable replicas. They don't want stability, they want chaos. Random mutation, unpredictable recombination. Suffering produces genetic desperation. Desperation produces adaptation. Adaptation produces traits. They can't engineer artificially. The settlement attacks will continue. Every 5 to 7 years, coordinated strikes across the wasteland. Diamond City, Rivet City, Megaton, New Vegas, the NCR capital. Everywhere humans gather and rebuild, the aliens harvest. Not enough to prevent recovery, just enough to maintain fear. Frightened populations breed faster. Stress produces genetic variation. Fear makes them useful. The Brotherhood of Steel's obsession with alien technology isn't coincidence. The aliens have been leaving specific artifacts at specific locations for decades, letting humans find alien weapons, recover alien metals, reverse engineer alien systems. Each discovery feeds information back to Zeta. How quickly can humans adapt alien technology? What modifications do they make? Which genetic lines show aptitude for understanding alien science? I found my name in their efficiency reports. Director James Crawford. Assessment: highly cooperative. Genetic value: moderate. Psychological profile: susceptible to authority and perceived greater good arguments. Emotional leverage: family bonds. Status: archived for historical documentation. I wasn't a diplomat or a director. I was a case study, an example of how to manipulate human authority figures into betraying their own species. Sarah doesn't remember me, but she remembers being human. Sometimes, the modifications didn't completely erase her personality, just rewrote it. She works for them now, willingly, helps process new arrivals, explains the program to terrified abductees. She's become one of their recruiters, selling cooperation the same way I once did. The cycle continues. The Lone Wanderer changed everything when they fought their way aboard Zeta in 2277. I watched from my cell as they tore through the ship with a fury I hadn't seen in 2 centuries. They freed abductees, destroyed generators, killed the captain. For 48 hours, I thought maybe humanity had a chance. Then I accessed the backup systems and saw the truth. Zeta was supposed to be captured. The aliens let it happen. They wanted humans to take control of the death ray, wanted wastelanders to feel powerful, wanted the lone wanderer to believe they'd won a victory. Because now there's human DNA all over the bridge controls. Now the ship's systems have learned how humans think and react under pressure. Now they have living specimens who've demonstrated they can operate alien technology instinctively. The lone wanderer wasn't a hero, they were a field test. I've been transmitting this confession for months through the ship's communication array. Sally helped me build a signal booster from salvaged parts. We're broadcasting on every frequency humans still monitor: radio stations, emergency channels, military bands. Someone needs to know what's coming before the final harvest in 2287. That's just 10 years from now, in the timeline where I'm speaking from. 10 years before they return in force. The projections show exactly how it will unfold. The motherships will descend simultaneously over 12 major population centers, not to attack, to offer salvation. By 2287, the wasteland will be desperate enough, damaged enough, that the aliens won't need to take anyone by force. People will line up for the modifications that promise immunity to radiation, freedom from hunger, protection from the horrors of the surface. The integration won't look like an invasion, it'll look like a rescue. I've seen the propaganda materials they're preparing. Holographic displays showing transformed humans thriving in safe habitats. Testimonials from successful hybrids like Sarah, smiling and healthy. Promises of education, medicine, security for children. Everything the wasteland can't provide, they'll offer it freely. The price won't be discussed until after the modifications are irreversible. The vaults were always meant to fail, not all at once, but systematically, each experiment designed to break down in ways that forced residents to the surface at specific times. Vault 13's water chip, Vault 101's reactor failures, Vault 81's mole rat plague, all scheduled breakdowns, timed to release populations into the wasteland when the radiation levels were optimal for producing useful mutations. I found Colonel Hartigan's final transmission in the archives, the one that was never broadcast. He'd figured it out before the stress killed him. The aliens weren't just studying Earth, they were studying thousands of worlds simultaneously. Earth was just one farm in a vast agricultural empire. We weren't special, we weren't chosen, we were simply convenient. His last words are burned into the ship's memory banks. They've been waiting for us to ripen, and nuclear war is just the harvest signal. The Clarabella 7 wasn't randomly intercepted. Hartigan's mission trajectory was calculated to pass through alien-controlled space at a specific time. The U.S. Space Administration had feeding flight plans to alien representatives for years. Every astronaut mission, every satellite launch, every probe sent beyond Earth's atmosphere, the aliens approved the schedules. They wanted us reaching for space, wanted us to feel like we were exploring, all while they controlled exactly what we found. The space stations orbiting Earth before the war weren't ours either, not entirely. I've seen the construction manifests. Robco supplied the habitat modules. West-Tec provided the life support systems. But the core reactor technology came from alien designs. Every human who worked on those stations was exposed to alien technology, their genetic code slowly adapting to alien radiation signatures, preparing their descendants for eventual integration. The moon landing in 1969 discovered something. The archives won't say what. All the files are classified above my clearance level, and I had presidential authority, but whatever Armstrong and Aldrin found on that surface, it was important enough that the Apollo program's real purpose was hidden even from most NASA personnel. The subsequent missions weren't about exploration, they were about retrieval. Sally showed me footage from the surface, recent footage. The wasteland is thriving in ways that shouldn't be possible 200 years after nuclear devastation. Plants are growing, animals are adapting, humans are rebuilding. The radiation should have killed everything, should have rendered the planet sterile for millennia, but it's healing, faster than natural processes allow. Because the aliens are helping, seeding the soil with engineered bacteria that break down radioactive isotopes, releasing modified insects that pollinate mutated crops, adjusting atmospheric composition through high-altitude dispersal. They're terraforming Earth back to habitability, not for humanity's benefit, but to make the harvest easier. The supermutant armies that plague the wasteland aren't random. I've tracked their movement patterns against alien collection schedules. Every major supermutant offensive coincides with population consolidation programs. When humans flee supermutant attacks, they gather in specific fortified settlements that happen to be located at optimal harvest coordinates. The supermutants are herding mechanisms, moving humans into collection pens. The Master wasn't the first to try unifying humanity under FEV transformation. I found records of 3 previous attempts, one in 2097, another in 2134, a third in 2189. Each time, someone discovered the FEV stockpiles. Each time, they tried to create a unified species immune to radiation. Each time, the aliens let the movement grow just large enough to gather useful data before ensuring its destruction. The Master's unity was the 4th iteration. There will be others. If you've ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me in the comments, because I've made every wrong choice, and now I'm trying to make one right one. The children of Adam aren't entirely insane. Their worship of radiation has some basis in truth the aliens accidentally revealed to early post-war survivors. The gamma radiation from nuclear weapons does carry information, does transform, does create, not through divine intervention, but through alien-engineered mutagenic triggers embedded in the fallout. Every nuclear bomb dropped in 2077 was pre-treated with alien biocatalysts. The children of Adam are worshipping the harvest mechanism without understanding what they're praying to. The glowing sea isn't natural. The crater that was Boston's ground zero shouldn't still be that radioactive. I've compared it to other nuclear impact sites. Hiroshima recovered. Nagasaki recovered. But the glowing sea maintains lethal radiation levels because alien drones service it regularly. They're maintaining it as a controlled mutation environment. Everything that survives there is valuable genetic data. Every creature, every plant, every human, foolish enough to enter, all test subjects in their ongoing research. I've identified 17 key individuals across the wasteland whose genetic profiles match alien optimization criteria. The sole survivor from Vault 111, the lone wanderer from Vault 101, the courier from the Mojave, each one demonstrating remarkable survival capabilities, each one carrying pre-war genetic code untainted by random wasteland mutation, each one marked in alien databases as priority collection targets. The cryopods in Vault 111 weren't Vault-Tec technology, not originally. The base design came from alien stasis systems licensed to cryotech through shell companies. Every human frozen in Vault 111 was preserved in alien-compatible suspension. When the Institute came for Sean, they were collecting alien-designated specimens. Father's entire life was alien-influenced. His cancer wasn't natural decline. It was programmed obsolescence, ensuring he'd need to create Gen 3 synths, spreading alien-compatible genetics into the Commonwealth. The Railroad's face change technology, alien memory wipe systems adapted for human use. The Institute's teleportation, simplified versions of alien beam technology. The Brotherhood's Liberty Prime, built using recovered alien weapon schematics. Every major technological achievement in the wasteland traces back to alien sources. Humanity isn't rebuilding on its own. It's following a development path the aliens engineered. Nick Valentine remembers being human. His synth brain holds pre-war memories from the real Nick Valentine, a detective who investigated alien abductions before the war. I found his case files in the archives. He'd tracked 17 disappearances to a pattern centered on CIT. He'd identified Robco board members as potential infiltrators. He was 3 weeks away from exposing the alien presence when the bombs fell. The Institute putting his memories into a synth body wasn't mercy. It was the alien, ensuring his investigative skills survived for future use. Kellogg's implants came from alien biotech, the same enhancement technology they used on Sarah, the same modifications they've been testing for centuries. He thought he was getting cutting-edge Institute technology. He was being integrated into the alien system. Every enhanced human is a step toward full hybridization. Every implant is a compatibility test. I've calculated the harvest projection for 2,287 based on current wasteland population estimates and mutation distribution data. The aliens expect to collect approximately 400,000 viable specimens. That's 400,000 humans who meet their genetic criteria, transformed, modified, integrated. The rest will be culled, left to die on a surface they can no longer survive without alien support systems. The Commonwealth will be hit first, highest concentration of synth-compatible genetics, then the Capital Wasteland, then the Mojave, the NCR territory, Appalachia. Each region harvested in sequence, optimal specimens extracted, remainder eliminated or abandoned. By 2290, human population will be reduced to scattered survivors in areas too remote or too damaged for the aliens to bother with. But there's something they didn't account for. Something I've been working on with Sally and the other long-term prisoners. The alien systems are old, ancient. They've been using the same basic technology for millions of years because it works, because nothing they've encountered has ever successfully resisted. But human adaptability isn't like anything they've cultivated before. We're unpredictable, chaotic. We don't follow their projections as cleanly as other species did. The Master's unity almost succeeded, not because of FEV, but because he offered purpose. The Brotherhood hoards technology, not for power, but for preservation. The Railroad fights for synth freedom, not for genetic advantage, but for principle. These behaviors confuse alien algorithms. They can't model human irrationality accurately. That's our only advantage, our glorious, self-destructive unpredictability. I've embedded warning codes in this transmission, frequencies and patterns that will trigger Pip-Boy alerts. If you're listening to this, and your Pip-Boy starts clicking in specific rhythms, you're marked for collection. The pattern is 3 short clicks, 2 long, 3 short. That's alien designation for premium specimen. If you hear that pattern, destroy your Pip-Boy. The tracker can't be removed, but it can be shielded with lead. Get underground, get away from settlements, become invisible to their systems. The second pattern is 1 long click, 4 short. That means you're in a designated harvest zone. The area will be targeted in the next collection sweep. You have approximately 6 months to relocate before alien drones arrive. Move to areas with high background radiation. The aliens avoid zones above 4,000 rads. They need specimens damaged but viable, not completely destroyed. Sarah found me in my cell last week, the first time she's visited in decades. For just a moment, I saw recognition in her eyes. Some fragment of my daughter still exists under the modifications. She whispered coordinates. A facility on the surface, hidden, pre-war military installation that survived the bombs. She said there are others there, humans who've figured it out, who are preparing resistance. I don't know if I can trust her. Don't know if the aliens sent her to give me false hope. But I've been here 200 years. I've watched Earth burn and rebuild and burn again from orbit. I've documented everything they've done. If there's even a chance someone down there is fighting back, I have to try to help them. The teleportation beacon Sally installed will get me to the surface. One-time use. The aliens will notice the energy signature. They'll know someone's escaped, but maybe that's the point. Maybe we need them to. No, we're not all compliant anymore. This is my final transmission from Mothership Zeta, Director James Crawford, USSA Intelligence, signing off. If you're hearing this, the harvest is coming. In 10 years, they'll offer you salvation. They'll promise you everything the wasteland took away. Don't believe them. Don't take their modifications. Don't board their ships. Die human. That's better than surviving as something else. The settlement attacks will intensify. The super mutant armies will grow. The radiation storms will worsen. All of it designed to make you desperate, to make their offer seem like the only choice. But there are always choices, even when they seem impossible. Hartigan tried to make peace with them. Holly tried to communicate with them. Sarah tried to cooperate with them. I tried to use them. We all failed because we treated them like conquerors when they're actually farmers. You can't negotiate with a farmer about whether the harvest happens. You can only burn in the field. The other motherships are waiting. Beta, Gamma, Delta, 9 more whose names I don't know, each one containing thousands of human specimens, each one holding genetic libraries from civilizations that trusted alien promises. If Zeta falls, the others will continue. If all 12 fall, there are hundreds more across the galaxy. This isn't a war we can win, but we can make ourselves a failed crop, unprofitable, too much trouble to cultivate, if enough humans resist, if enough of us fight back. If we can demonstrate that harvesting Earth costs more than the genetic material is worth, then maybe they'll move on to easier worlds. That's what I'm hoping, that humanity can be too expensive to farm. The beacon is ready. Sally is waiting at the teleport platform. Elliot and Soma are creating a distraction. Toshiro is somehow building explosives from medical supplies. We're going to damage Zeta's main reactor before I teleport out. Not enough to destroy the ship, but enough to require decades of repairs, enough to delay the 2,287 harvest schedule, buy Earth a few more years. Maybe that's enough. Maybe someone down there will use that time to prepare, to warn others, to find a way to shield populations from alien detection. Maybe the resistance Sarah mentioned is real, or maybe this is all part of their plan too. Maybe they want us to fight back because resistance produces data they haven't collected yet. Maybe every choice I make just feeds their research. I don't know anymore. I'm so tired, but I'm going to act anyway, because the alternative is accepting that everything I did, everyone I sacrificed, was for nothing, and I can't die believing that. If you find this recording in the wasteland, if you're listening years or centuries after I've transmitted it, know that we tried. Know that some of us saw what was coming and fought it anyway. Know that humanity didn't go quietly into their harvest. The aliens are real. The conspiracy theorists were right. The government did make deals. The abductions were sanctioned. The war was planned. All of it true. All of it documented here on Zeta. And all of it still happening while you rebuild your settlements and scavenge your ruins and fight your petty wars. They're watching, waiting, cultivating. The harvest is coming. This is James Crawford, transmitting from orbit 200 years after I signed humanity's death warrant. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I've done. But maybe this warning can save some of you. Maybe that's enough.